Hello, everybody. Bo Prosser, Center for Christian Education, www.c4ce.org. Welcome back to another video episode in our leadership series. Today, we're looking at Bible study programming, Bible study that actually encompasses the whole church program. My special guest today, good friend, Dr. Charles Qualls, author, pastor, frequent guest on the Day One radio program, and senior associate with the Center for Christian Education. Charles, thanks for joining me. This is a fascinating story, and I can't wait to dig into it.
Oh, thanks for having me back, and look forward to talking with you about this. I'll talk all day about this, so thank you for wanting to.
All right, we don't have all day, but we do have right now. And
Right.
so we're going to dig in, looking at how you took this idea of preaching, teaching, praying, studying through every book of the Bible in a year. That's just fascinating to me, and I can't wait to see what happens. You began to look for a unified biblical narrative and this thread that is woven through every book of the Bible: love God, love self, love neighbor as you love yourself, and how God guides us in that narrative. How did you find that? How did that happen?
Well, I think any of us could take a string in the Bible and pull on it and find that there's a longer thread there than we realized. These are some of the ones that just continue. These are not New Testament narratives; they are biblical narratives, and they are themes that do seem to hold the entire story together. And so this series called One Story doesn't negate that each individual book in some way stands on its own. Each individual book has its own original purpose. We obviously the Bible is made up of several different kinds of literature, and so all those things are still firmly in place that we've learned about the Bible. What we're doing in studying all the way through the Bible, though, is taking a look at it as one story, one arc from Genesis to Revelation. And so, as you pointed out, these three themes, for instance, just keep popping up from the earliest Old Testament all the way through, and it made it quite a compelling way to look at the Bible. I want to say one more thing about it, if I can.
Sure.
Preaching series are popular. Everybody preaches in series, it seems like. We use the lectionary here under normal circumstances for the majority of the year, and I look for groupings within the lectionary texts. So a series is something I'm used to, but this is a little bit of an extreme series, I realize.
This
Yeah.
was quite the series. Uh, and as you dug in a little deeper, God's guidance became that recurring theme: God's guidance to love God, God's guidance to love self, God's guidance to love neighbor as you love yourself. Uh, and God is still guiding. At least that's what I say. What do you say?
You know, we have this person who steps out of the crowd and says, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment in the Bible? And what does Jesus do? He reaches back to the very beginning and pulls out effectively the Hebrew Shema and attaches to it, love your neighbor. And he says, this thing that has always been still is the path that God wants us to keep. And so Jesus validates this as a through theme. And there are so many more examples of that. When we get to Revelation, one of the things, if we really dig deep and actually study John's Revelation, we're going to find out that the person who wrote that knew his Old Testament very well, because there are more Old Testament quotations in Revelation than I think most of us are geared to
Uh,
recognize at first. So again, this narrative arc of one story just keeps playing through.
and Jesus was a student of the Old Testament.
Absolutely.
There wasn't a New Testament during the life of Jesus.
Exactly. And on the cross, even Jesus quotes from the 22nd Psalm. So Jesus is constantly quoting or saying, "You have been told, you have been taught, but now I say." And so sometimes he'll take and build on or improve on things that they have heard in the past, straighten out misconceptions about some of the old teachings. So, yeah, Jesus was a teacher of the Old Testament. When he sat down at his home synagogue and opened the scroll and read from it and made them so mad that they tried to kill him. What he really did was read from Isaiah 61.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, this story holds
Amazing.
together.
So why go through the Bible? What was it that you were looking for? What did you hope? How did this idea come about?
If I'm most honest and go back to the beginning of the story, the idea started in 1995. I arrived at First Baptist Greensboro, North Carolina, associate pastor for adult education. And Randall Lawley, who many of our longer time Baptists might remember as a great Baptist leader, he was the pastor there in the final chapter of his ministry. And he was preaching all the way through the Bible in the same way, one book of the Bible each Sunday, and fly over it as thoroughly as you possibly could. And so I can't say that for 30 years I've wanted to do that, but it is a memory from 30 years ago. And recently I had begun to wonder what kind of exercise would that be? And how might we do that and make it comprehensive for the life of the church? So that's really where it started.
So we've already talked about the unified narrative that you discovered, uh, avoiding fragmented interpretation. So I'm guessing you're not just proof texting out of every book of the Bible, but you're giving us a central theme. You're giving us the thread again that goes through that. How does this help you avoid just kind of picking and choosing and proof texting through the scriptures?
So if the yearning to do this started with my fascination of preaching and teaching through the Bible as an exercise, one of my agenda items might be to improve biblical literacy. We live in a complex world. We live in a world with deep problems, a lot of complexity to it. And teaching and preaching through the Bible is not going to solve those problems. But we have this sacred document that we say we love, and we have this faith that a lot of people are talking about right now. And it seemed to me that if we could be more literate with that central document, the Holy Bible, and if we could know it better, and if we could, among other things, teach our people to stop proof texting, to stop reaching into the Bible and plucking out the one verse that confirms their bias, that confirms their enculturation, and instead have some integrity about how we treat the Bible and some understanding about it, then we can at least improve that part of the dialogue. So that's kind of where it fits in for me. This is discipleship exercise that I believe, if nothing else, should be improving our biblical literacy as a congregation.
So biblical literacy was maybe the guiding germination, if you will. But what other spiritual evidence or spiritual growth evidence did you see emerging in this?
We're in the home stretch right now of one story. We can talk in a little bit about how we did this and where it all started, but we're in the home stretch right now. I'm starting to hear feedback from people. One person said, "I grew up in the home of a Methodist preacher." And to be honest with you, I was always a little skeptical about the Bible, and I was burned out on church. And now in my senior adult years, this has taught me more about the Bible and caught my interest more than anything I've done in my adult life. When you hear feedback like that, two members recently, independent of each other, said the same thing to me on the same Sunday. They said, if we could start one story over right now, I would do it gladly because I know there has to be more. This has not gotten old. I'm loving it so much that if you told me we were going to restart it, I would say I'm here for it.
Oh
So
boy.
it seems to have scratched a spiritual itch in the congregation. And when you hear things like that, you realize, oh, I'm not the only one interested in this. So that's been
So
gratifying.
you saw personal growth. Have you seen any congregational growth in the midst of this?
On Wednesday nights, I definitely have. The Bible study attendance has increased noticeably. The Bible study attendance, average Bible study attendance has increased about 35%. I'll take that any day. Sunday morning, to be honest with you, it has not affected Sunday morning all that much, and I don't know that I ever thought it would. But it has certainly increased, which tells me our people are willing to come back out for discipleship. And if nothing else, that has told me something about my congregation that I can love very much.
And so spiritual clarity around the mission of Franklin Baptist Church began to emerge
Yeah.
somewhere in the second quarter of this, I think you said. People began to understand that uh, who we are as a church, not only is that thread in the scripture, that thread is also in the church and the programming that we do. So, what did you begin to see around that?
Yeah, there's been a go and do likewise emphasis sort of built into this. We're not just studying this for the knowledge of the Bible, but emphasis has included transformed lives, transformed living. And our church has always been missionally aware, missionally active, but we have as passionate a commitment and real participation in mission and ministry right now as I've seen in my time here. Our people understand that we have a responsibility not only to our community, but we have a responsibility to do the things that God directs us to do. And so it's been a nice way to highlight why we do what we do and how we do what we do. It's a good journey.
And you saw some deeper personal intimacy with God.
I'm hearing stories of people who, well, first of all, I'm hearing people say, I'm reading the Bible along with this series. So it has made daily Bible readers out of some of my congregation. That in and of itself is quite an amazing outcome. But then what I'm also hearing is people who are uh, asking me for resources on different books. If a particular book catches their fancy in a way it hasn't before, I
Mhm.
can direct them to our church library. We have a great church library, and of course everybody's got Amazon, and we can point them to resources. And I've had that chance many times during the one story time as well. I'm also hearing about people whose coworkers are saying, "Hey, would you bring the handouts from Wednesday night to work on Thursdays?" And so for instance, I have an office manager who says every Thursday her her coworkers, two of her coworkers, ask her for the handouts, and then they sit and watch the video from Wednesday night and go through the handouts. So,
Uh,
it has trickled down. I had somebody from a neighboring church tell me. He said, I go to my church on Sunday morning, but we come home, I eat lunch, and I go to my computer because I want to hear your sermon from one story. I am worshiping with your church through one story because I want to learn about the Bible. So just little
Amazing.
anecdotal things like that have been amazing.
So, what did this do for you personally?
Yeah.
How did
Yeah.
this impact your life?
Thank you for asking that, Bo. I suspected that the exercise would be challenging to me, and it is. If you want to feel alive, take on the weekly commitment that the care and feeding and nurture of one story will demand of you. But my time management has had to be all the sharper through this series to keep up. But What I think I had underestimated or maybe not even thought about was, we all, if we go to seminary, we could wish we had paid closer attention in seminary. We could wish we had learned some things that the professors were trying to maybe get across to us. But even if we did well and we're good students, there's a shelf life on our educations. It didn't get downloaded into us in seminary, and then we were ready for the rest of our ministry. And so this has freshened in a profound way. I'm going to say that only my doctorate has probably would be the other thing that I would say of these mileposts along the journey. I would say my doctorate is probably the only thing that has freshened my educational shelf life as much as one story has. So I've been learning along with my congregation, and that's been so fulfilling.
Mm. Well, most of us, our Bibles are personally thin.
Very thin.
So I have Matthew in my Bible, I have Luke in my Bible, I have Psalms in my Bible, and Philippians. Those are, if you look at my preaching schedule, those four come up more often than not.
Yeah.
Did you find your Bible broadening? Did you find passages you hadn't thought of that suddenly became impactful for you?
When you say you're going to do one story and you're going to take 70, 75 weeks, whatever it turns out to be, and you're going to do one story, what you're promising your congregation and yourself is that you are going to find yourself one Sunday in Habakkuk, and you're going to journey with him up onto the wall and watch him pledge to be a watchman for God, though he is begging God to appear. You're going to find yourself studying in Numbers and Leviticus, and
Oh
you are
man.
going to have to make a meaningful sermon from those that has something to do with our living.
Yeah.
You are going to have to go through all the oddity and violence of Judges and teach your congregation what place Judges holds in our Bible and remind them of some of the beautiful, powerful stories that are found in there too. And then
Mm.
reckon with that violence and
Yeah.
hardship and the conquest that God is portrayed as causing the people to do, which means to displace people who were already inhabiting this promised land. All those things and more are things you're going to do when you do one story. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've visited my favorite parts of the Bible. I got to journey for one week in Esther with all of its power and beauty. I got to this week I'm in Hebrews. My favorite two verses from the Bible are found in the 12th chapter of Hebrews. And so I'm getting to preach this sermon built around running the race with endurance. So yeah, you got to do the hard stuff, but you get to do your favorite stuff too, and it's all in there. And then on Wednesday night, you got to teach it again.
Yeah.
You got to take the overflow into Wednesday night and give them the stuff that didn't make it into the sermon as well. So in Numbers and Leviticus, you're going to be there twice in one week.
Ah. Well, let's talk about production.
Yeah.
So you didn't start in Genesis and go from Genesis to Revelation. You moved around in different ways. So how did this look? What was the order? How did you decide that? And how far out did you start the planning of it?
Okay, so actually, just to answer one question, actually, we are going through it in the order that it's in our Bible. So we did start in Genesis. However, I also built in an introductory session before we got to Genesis. I
Okay.
wanted to see what the Bible said about itself. And so we moved around through the entire Bible for that Sunday and for that Wednesday, asking the Bible, what does it say about itself? We also talked about the process by which we got the scriptures. So all those kind of things introduced the Bible as a whole. And then we backed the car out of the garage and started on the journey and started in Genesis. And so we have kind of gone book through book. I also stopped between Old and New Testaments, and one Sunday and one Wednesday had to do with the intertestamental period.
Okay.
because the world that the last of the prophecies left off in and the world into which Jesus Christ is born are two different worlds, at least 400 years apart.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know how we got there, and I wanted to know how the culture had changed, and I wanted to know who was in charge when the prophets were writing and who is in charge now when Jesus is born. So we did that in the series as well.
Okay. So you did go Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers,
We
just
have, we
Sunday
have.
after Sunday. All right. So how far out did you start the planning?
So we started planning. I broached this topic to my associate pastor for music and worship, Jeremy. I have to say, Jeremy Poplin has been an incredible partner through this. I could not imagine a better partner to work with in something this ambitious. We'll talk more about what he's doing in a little bit. But I mentioned this to him as a dream in March, and he got excited about it. So by late March, we had gone to another part of the building, asked our assistant to not let anybody interfere with us, and we spent an afternoon in a conference room asking ourselves if we really wanted to do this and what it might mean if we did it right. So March for a September start
Okay.
is when we started planning.
All right. So other than Randall Lolly's sermons, what other resources? I mean, this is not an off-the-shelf program.
No.
You've invented this, if you will,
Yes.
put it together, planned it, and it is Sunday morning, Wednesday night. It is special music. It is prayers. It is missions. We'll talk more about the inclusive, holistic elements in a minute. But are there other resources? If I wanted to do this in my church, is there a resource I can purchase to get this done?
Let me give you two answers to that. First, Randall's sermons were collected in a book that was published a few years ago, and I want to give a shout out to Good Faith Media. They collected Randall's sermons as he preached all the way through the Bible. The book is called Journey with Me, Randall Lolley, Lolley. And that is literally just the transcription of his sermons collected in one binding. Beautiful, beautiful collection. So I would commend that to anybody. It has been a resource that I, each week, as a matter of integrity, do not allow myself to look at until Wednesday when I'm preparing for the Bible study.
Okay.
I wanted to guarantee that my sermons were not going to be a copy of Randall's. And so I don't read his sermon on a book until I've already preached it on Sunday. So the rest of this came from just field work that Jeremy and I had to start doing when we committed to do the series. We both took off from March on and started moving in two different directions. I started evaluating my personal library here at the church and any online resources I might be able to gather. For instance, I didn't have any books on the intertestamental period, but I did have notes from a session where Dr. Thomas Slater from the McAfee School of Theology taught for a few weeks on the intertestamental period. I dug those notes out. In my notes, he had provided a bibliography. I started ordering some of the books that were in his bibliography. Collected those up, though I knew I wasn't going to need them for almost a year. So we began gathering resources. Jeremy, in the meantime, goes to the music library as a brand new minister of music at our church, veteran though he is in his career, but new at our church. He went through, created his own fresh new database, and he cataloged every anthem that we had for adult choir and for handbells and for instruments.
Mercy.
So that when he got to any book of the Bible in a given week, he could put in, Genesis and find any anthems that might be based in Genesis. He accessed the same kind of information about the hymn book that we use, the Celebrating Grace hymnal, which is built around a lectionary awareness anyway, the church year and the lectionary awareness. And he found a good, reliable database on that, and he can look up hymns in the hymn book around any scripture or theme we might be doing as well. So we both took off and started doing our spade work all these months ahead when we knew the first worship service around this wasn't going to be delivered until September.
So I
Uh,
know, at least
rest
I think anyway, you are developing a resource.
Thank
Am I
you. The
correct there?
rest of the answer to your question. Jeremy and I have been asked by a publisher if we would write up. They saw two articles that were done on our one story series. And as a result, a publisher has asked us if we would publish an overview of how we've done this. And so when we finish the series, right now we are just getting through the series. But when we finish the series, we're going to begin work on a resource that would guide others through this if you want to do that. And so I wish I had a title and a pub date. I don't. But and then at some point separately, we're probably also going to compile, especially sermons and Bible study notes and music resources, and put those in a separate printed resource.
Well, when that becomes available, when those resources become available, we'll certainly promote that through the
Thank
center
you.
and through all of our vehicles. So please keep me posted on that.
We want
Uh,
people to be able to do this, Bo, and maybe we can save them at least a little bit of the work.
Lord
So
have mercy. The work y'all have put into it. And if I'm remembering correctly, the last hurrah, if you will, of this journey is a brand new cantata musical presentation that Jeremy's writing and composing.
Jeremy is, among his gifts, a gifted composer and enjoys doing that. And so, one of the commitments we made in March as we brainstormed and dreamed this whole thing was that we would have a capstone musical celebration to lead our congregation in reflecting and celebrating this journey that we finished. And so he is about 40% finished with the actual composing. He has outlined it. He knows what he's going to do all the way through, but he's about 40% through composing the music for that. I've actually seen notes on staffs on paper already. And
Wow.
first of the year, our choir will begin rehearsing that. We're going to bring an orchestra. And so for Easter time, it'll culminate in the victory of Christ defeating death at the tomb. And so when we celebrate what would normally be our Easter concert, it will be the one story cantata. And we're excited about that too. Can't wait.
Wow. So, as we said earlier, this is a holistic presentation. This was not just Sunday morning sermons. Uh, this touched every program, almost every program of your church. So, beginning in worship, uh, you had unified sermons and special music and hymns all tied together. And I'm guessing prayers within worship and whatever else you did. So, uh, worship, any other elements of worship that emerged from these studies?
This touches as many elements of worship as it possibly can. When Jeremy sits down each Monday to design that week's worship service, he is studying almost to a level as I am writing the sermon, because he is writing litany. So in a typical worship service, we're going to have a prayer of the day. We're going to have the call to come and worship. And then we're going to have a responsive call to worship that the congregation participates in. We're going to have an invocation. Then we're going to have a call to confession later in the service after we've sung a little bit, and a prayer of confession and a declaration of forgiveness. Every one of those reflects some understandings and elements of the book that I'm going to be preaching in later in the worship service. So he
My
studies
God.
each Monday to write the litanies customized to this. Additionally, the hymns that we sing are tied to the theme, if not directly based in the book that we're studying from. Same thing with the choir anthems, where possible. He has used anthems that point back to that day's scripture and theme. Of course, so many of the anthems are directly based in biblical text, so that's been fairly easy. Even some of their preludes, postludes, and offertories have been songs that
Wow.
point everybody to this. So when people finish an hour of worship here, we have very comprehensively visited that day's book of the Bible.
So what about mission work? You touched on that for just a moment. How is your missions immersion been affected by all this?
We have done one video promo in this series, and before it's over, we'll do at least another video missions promo that helps our congregation see how what we do embodies some of these major themes and teachings and commands that are found in this one story. How what we do embodies what we've been studying and what we've heard. And so the biggest way it's coloring our mission work is that it is giving us a lens through which to look at what we're already doing. So that's really
Then
the element there.
then special programming.
I give you the best example I can think of, Faith on Draft. The pub theology movement's been popular throughout the nation, and we started 7 years ago now. We initiated a Faith on Draft group here in Franklin that meets out in the city at a bar once monthly. We have one question, and for the hour, our group simply has a conversation around that one question. And so the commitment we made was that for this year of one story, the question would be based on something we've just recently dealt with in our biblical journey. So,
Wow.
for instance, when you're in Genesis, a question at Faith on Draft was when God created, how did God self limit?
Ah,
Yeah. And so that was a really nice conversation. Another one, still reflecting on Genesis journey and sort of the ongoing nature of creation. We talked recently in a Faith on Draft around the question, how can I reconcile my scientific and human understandings of the physical world and time specifically, as opposed to what the Bible might seem to portray, especially in Genesis? That
so
was an amazing hour.
I'm sure I'm followed your Faith on Draft. I've not been able to attend, but I'm just always amazed at the things that come up and the stories that come out of that. You had this grand idea. You sat in a room for a day and planned it all out. Did you test this to see, can we even do this?
Yeah, yeah, in a few ways. Um, One thing I said to Jeremy as we walked out of the first meeting brainstorming this, I said to him, let's you and me pull aside in a few days, and I want to gut check each of us. And the only question is, are you down for this? So the first test was, do you have any hesitancy about this? Or are you excited about it? What we found in that was we were both excited about it. So, okay, fine, we move on then. Then we begin to design. How would this work? And what are the church high points, the church holidays, the moments on the liturgical calendar that must be paid attention? The seasons like Lent and Advent, but also times like World Communion Sunday, which we robe up for and celebrate each year. Um, uh, All Saints Sunday is going to come during a church year. Just things like that. How will we handle that? Will we suspend the series during Lent? Will we suspend it for a few weeks during Advent? All those kind of things were questions we asked ourselves. And then we began to map it out on a calendar and say, okay, if we started on this date, when would it end? How many weeks would it take? How many extra weeks do we need to build in because of those mileposts on the church calendar? What do we do when I'm on vacation? And so we just dealt with all those kinds of questions. And once we did calendar it out, we then stress tested it against reality. I said to Jeremy, take this schedule and please find the problems in it. Please find the parts of this that don't make any sense or that seem to not be real. And
Wow.
so based on that, we began to realize that we actually had a pretty good plan and that it was going to hold up realistically. So
So
yeah, we tested.
you weren't in Habakkuk on Mother's Day.
No, and if we were, I'm trying to remember now where we were on Mother's Day or Father's Day. If we were, we stuck with the series, if with integrity and without stretching it too far. The book of the Bible really did give us a theme or a lesson that could be applied to that day.
And what
Um,
about Easter? Did you
uh,
suspend for Easter?
Easter, we definitely suspended. Christmas and Advent, we definitely suspended for
Okay.
just 2 or 3 weeks each time.
Okay.
But we did not do as full blown an Advent and did not do as full blown a Lent as we would have. We let the series encroach a Sunday or so into, but once we got into a few weeks within, we just stepped off and let the season play through because it must.
Okay.
Um, so similarly, when we came to Ash Wednesday, we took that night off and did Ash Wednesday.
Okay.
So we've really tried to be careful to respect the moments of the church calendar that just must be paid attention to, and then we would just jump right back into the series and let it keep playing.
Well, with your thread, love God, love self, love others, that that plays in almost all of the church calendar.
It
So,
does.
there's a story at least, I would think.
Well,
So I'm just fascinated, man. You all have worked your tails off, and
it's been very intentional.
so what have you learned?
Yeah, yeah. Let me reach back and just touch one piece and give you an example of a serendipity we found, Bo. When we started mapping this thing out, we realized that we were going to be in Ruth for All Saints Sunday. Well, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
And then one day we realized, just took a peek at the lectionary and realized that one of the lectionary texts for All Saints Sunday was also in Ruth. So we just let the series play that day because it gave us a gift. Look at the relationship and the commitments that these saints gave to each other. And
Yeah.
so sometimes we found that the series didn't interfere at all, but in fact played quite well.
Uh,
Lessons that we've learned from the one story journey. Um, One is to know our congregations. If this wouldn't go over well in your congregation and you know it, then don't do it, would be the first thing I would tell someone.
yeah.
Um, but I felt like in our congregation, it at least would be doable and that they might embrace it. And because I'd been here several years, that paid off. My hunch that they would embrace it turned out, in fact, to be absolutely true.
Mm.
You had better be prepared for some personal spiritual growth. You will find parts of the Bible you thought you knew about that you didn't really know as much about as you thought you did. You'll get to know on new terms because I've never been this old before. I've never been at this point in my own personal journey, in my own spiritual journey before. And so some of these books and stories just began to look different to me this time through. So the personal spiritual growth is a rich reward for the pastor and staff in this exercise.
Mm. Um,
God's truth really is timeless and timely. Uh, when you are preaching some of the gospels and the parables that Jesus teaches, you are reminded again just how timeless it is. But when you look into the interpersonal and political and genocide and discriminatory and misogynistic aspects that are found in Esther, you better recognize that we are still living in that day. And
Yes.
so those are just some examples of how God's truths really are timeless and timely. And so I think this series will have some surprises in store for anybody who takes it on.
And just listening to you, it is a massive undertaking. Uh, you all did such good work. I can't wait for the resources. So quickly, so what? This was
Yeah.
transformative for you and your congregation. You embraced a unified story and daily spiritual influences. Almost daily, someone was coming to you with some kind of testimony about how they'd been impacted. Uh, was it worth it?
I can answer that question better today than I could have a week ago, and let me tell you why. I wrapped up the Bible study a few minutes early Wednesday night. It was a Bible study on Philemon. Now, again, Bo, I don't see a lot of Philemon embroidered on throw pillows at the Christian bookstore. We don't see Philemon bumper stickers on the backs of cars, right?
Right.
I had finished up the Bible study on Philemon, and it was somewhere over 5 minutes early. And I said, "Hey, I don't want to keep you unduly. We've done about all we need to do with this." And our people sat there, and I thought I was about to pray and send them home. And our people started dialoguing about how they had enjoyed this journey to this point and how we're almost done with it. And it's like a book you've rushed to get through, and now you're disappointed that you're coming to the end. And our people talked until 7 o'clock, time for me to pray and send them home, reflecting on and debriefing already this one story journey. And they did that completely without me prompting them and completely unscripted. So
Wow.
I think my congregation told me the story of their embrace of it, and how it has influenced them and how much it's meant to them. And so it was encouraging and it was gratifying.
Well, man, this is just so exciting and amazing. I use that word a lot, but my other word is intentional, and you were very intentional in how you put this together, how it fit on the calendar, how you lived into it, how you lived around it. It's just amazing, and it is worth the work. Your own testimony.
It has
You've
been.
been changed. Your church has been changed. Your leadership has been changed. Your people have been changed, and they journeyed with you. They didn't fight you in it, which I just find so compelling in this day of church and church work. So congratulations, my brother. You hit on something just fabulous. If you want more information about one story or other church resources, of course, you can get me, bo.prosser@gmail.com, Center for Christian Education, on YouTube. We got a variety of videos on leadership, on stewardship, on preaching, on programming. So please go check out our videos. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would just be a wonderful gift, and then you can keep up with all of the stuff we're doing at the center. More importantly, perhaps, if you want more information on one story, Charles has graciously shared his Gmail address. You can also write to Franklin Baptist Church, and you can find that on the web as well. Charles, one story is fabulous, and man, you hit on such a great idea, and you've just given us a glimpse. We could talk for hours, I'm sure, on the different aspects. Is there one word or one sentence that comes to your mind as we think about this experience and what it has meant to you?
If I had one word, it'd be gratitude. I'm thankful we did it. If I had a sentence, I would say it's worth the work. Uh,
Uh,
it's absolutely worth the work.
Well, thanks for joining me and giving me just an overview of this. It's just amazing. I've said that throughout way too much, but I'm just sitting here appreciative of the intentionality that you and Jeremy put into this and the way your people responded. Hey, folks, more information is available. Please respond to us. Go on our website, go on the Center's YouTube channel, reach out to us however we can help you look at this further. Bo Prosser, Bo and the Beard, Center for Christian Education, www.c4ce.org. Hey, thanks for joining me. Till I see you again, friends. Keep on rocking.